Scary telling. I couldn't believe what my wife was saying. She kept insisting that our daughter had passed away 2 years ago, but I knew she was still alive. I could feel her presence around me, even if I couldn't see her. As we argued in the living room, a small voice interrupted us. "Who are you talking to, Daddy?" I turned around to see my daughter standing behind me, her bright blue eyes looking up at me with confusion. "Daddy's not talking to anyone, sweetheart," my wife said, a note of sadness in her voice. I tried to hide my shock and confusion. Was my wife right all along? Had our daughter really passed away, and I was just imagining her? But as I looked at my daughter, I knew that couldn't be true. I could see her, hear her, feel her. She was real to me, even if she wasn't to anyone else. As the weeks went on, my wife's insistence that our daughter was dead only grew stronger. She would cry at night, telling me that she missed our daughter so much and wished I would accept the truth. But I couldn't. I knew my daughter was still out there somewhere, and I was determined to find her. One day, I received an anonymous message on my phone. It was a blurry photo of a young girl with a message that read, "Is this your daughter?" My heart skipped a beat as I looked at the photo. It was my daughter, the one I had been searching for all this time. I immediately went to my wife, hoping to show her the photo and convince her that our daughter was still alive. But when I showed her the picture, she just stared at it blankly. "That's not our daughter," she said, her voice monotone. I was at a loss. How could she not see it was our daughter? Had she really convinced herself so completely that our daughter was gone? That night, as I lay in bed, I heard a soft voice calling my name. It was my daughter, calling out to me from the darkness. "Daddy, where are you?" she said, her voice shaking. I got out of bed and followed the sound of her voice, leading me to the front door. I opened it to find my daughter standing there, shivering in the cold. "Daddy, why can't Mommy see me?" she said, tears streaming down her face. I didn't have an answer for her. All I knew was that my wife had convinced herself that our daughter was gone, and nothing I said or did could change her mind. As the months went on, my wife's mental state continued to deteriorate. She would talk to herself, crying out for our daughter to come back to her. And then one day, I woke up to find her gone. She had left a note, saying that she couldn't bear to live without her daughter and had gone to join her in the afterlife. I was devastated, but I knew I had to keep going. I couldn't let my daughter's memory fade away, even if no one else could see her. And so, I continued to talk to her, to feel her presence around me, and to hold on to the hope that one day, maybe, she would be seen by someone else. But for now, she remained the unseen daughter, a figment of my imagination that only I could see and hear. I always thought my cat had a staring problem. She would sit on my lap and just gaze at me with those big, round, green eyes. At first, I found it endearing, but as time went on, it became unsettling. No matter where I went in my apartment, she would follow me, her gaze always locked on me. It was like she was watching my every move, studying me. One day, I was sitting on my couch, scrolling through my phone, when I noticed something strange. My cat was sitting next to me, staring intently at the wall behind me. Her eyes were fixed on a spot just above my head. I tried to follow her gaze, but I couldn't see anything. It was just an empty wall. The next day, the same thing happened. My cat sat next to me, her eyes fixed on that same spot on the wall. This time, I got up and walked around the room, trying to find whatever it was she was looking at. But I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. Over the next few days, my cat's behavior became more and more erratic. She started following me around the apartment even more than before. And she began to meow incessantly, as if she was trying to tell me something. Then, one night, I woke up to find my cat sitting on my chest, staring at me with those big, green eyes. I could feel her breath on my face, and I realized that she was not looking at me, but at something behind me. I turned my head, but I saw nothing. Just darkness. That's when I heard it. A faint whisper, like someone speaking just out of earshot. I sat up in bed, straining to hear what it was saying. But it was just too quiet. I got out of bed and stumbled around in the darkness, trying to find the source of the whisper. But it seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. From that night on, things got worse. My cat became more and more agitated, meowing constantly and refusing to leave my side. And the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They started to take on a sinister tone, like whatever was speaking to me was angry, or even malevolent. One night, I woke up to find my cat staring at me with a look of pure terror on her face. Her eyes were wide, and her fur was standing on end. That's when I saw it. A pair of eyes, glowing in the darkness just behind me. I turned around, but there was nothing there. Just emptiness. And yet, I could feel something watching me, just out of sight. The whispers grew louder until they were a deafening roar in my ears. And then, everything went black. When I woke up, my cat was gone. I searched the entire apartment, but she was nowhere to be found. And the whispers were still there, echoing in my mind. I never found out what happened to my cat. But I know that whatever was behind me that night, it wasn't human. And it's still out there, waiting for me to turn around. My mom and dad have always told me I can be anything in this world I want to be, and they will stand by me on whatever I choose. Unfortunately for them, the only thing I've ever wanted to be is an orphan. It's not that I didn't love them, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more out there for me. Something beyond their mundane suburban existence. Something that could only be found through tragedy. So I made a wish. I wished for my parents to die, in the most painless way possible, of course. I didn't want to be a monster. I just wanted to be free. At first, nothing happened. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. But then, one night, I woke up to a loud banging on my bedroom door. I opened it to find my parents standing there, drenched in blood. They had been in a terrible car accident, they told me, and they didn't have much time left. I couldn't believe it. My wish had come true. But as I looked into their dying eyes, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt. Had I really wanted this? Had I really wished for their death? It didn't matter. They were gone, and I was alone. At first, I reveled in my newfound freedom. I could do anything I wanted, go anywhere I wanted, be anyone I wanted. But soon, the loneliness set in. The house felt cold and empty without my parents there to fill it with their love and laughter. That's when I started to notice strange things happening. Doors would creak open on their own, objects would move across the room without explanation. At first, I dismissed it as my imagination, but soon it became clear that something was haunting me. It started with whispers in the night. I would wake up to the sound of someone calling my name, but when I turned on the lights, no one was there. Then came the footsteps. I could hear them pacing back and forth in the hallway outside my bedroom, but every time I opened the door, no one was there. I tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. The ghostly presence in my house was too strong, too insistent. And then, one night, it showed itself to me. I woke up to find a figure standing at the foot of my bed. It was tall and shadowy, with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through me. It didn't speak, but I could feel its anger, its hatred for me and everything I had done. That's when I realized my mistake. My wish had come with a price I wasn't willing to pay. The ghost was the manifestation of my guilt, my punishment for wishing for my parents' death. I tried to make amends, to ask for forgiveness, but it was too late. The ghost had taken hold of me, consuming me with its darkness. I was trapped, alone in the house with my guilt and my regret, forever haunted by the terrible wish I had made. Now, I wander the halls of my empty house, a ghost myself, trapped in a limbo of my own making. I can hear the whispers and the footsteps, the angry growls of the ghost that still haunts me. And as I look out into the world beyond my windows, I can't help but wonder what my life could have been if only I had been brave enough to choose a different path. I died. I remember feeling myself floating up away from my body, like a balloon on a gentle breeze. I was aware of the surroundings, but they were fading away as I ascended higher and higher. I had a sense that I was leaving something behind, but I couldn't remember what. Then, suddenly, I stopped. I felt like I had hit an invisible wall. And that's when I looked down and saw my body. It was there, on the bed, but it wasn't moving. I watched it for a while, wondering what was going on. Then, all of a sudden, my body woke up. It sat up on the bed, and I could see the confusion in its eyes. It was looking around the room, as if trying to figure out where it was. And that's when I realized that something was terribly wrong. I floated back down towards my body, but I couldn't get back inside. It was like I was stuck on the outside, looking in. I tried to communicate with my body, to tell it what was happening, but it couldn't hear me. It was like I was a ghost, invisible and unheard. Days went by, and I watched as my body went through its routine. It would get up, go to work, come home, and go to bed. It was like nothing had changed, but everything had changed. I was trapped, unable to move on or find peace. One night, as I was watching my body sleep, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A dark figure appeared in the room, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. It moved towards my body, and I could see its fingers stretching out towards it. I tried to scream, to warn my body, but nothing came out. The figure touched my body, and I could feel its icy grip. My body sat up, eyes glowing with the same unearthly light, and I knew that I was in trouble. The figure turned to me, and I could feel its anger. It was like it resented me for being there, for watching over my body. And then, just like that, it was gone. My body slumped back down onto the bed, and I was left alone once again. Days turned into weeks, and I watched as my body changed. It became more distant, more disconnected from the world around it. It stopped going to work, stopped seeing friends, stopped doing anything but lying in bed. And then, one night, I saw the figure again. This time, it was different. It was smaller, weaker, and it looked scared. It moved towards me, and I could see that it was trying to communicate with me. It told me that I was in a place called the unseen world, a place between life and death. It told me that I had to find a way back to my body, or else I would be trapped there forever. I begged it for help, but it was too late. My body had slipped into a coma, and there was no way to get back inside. I was trapped in the unseen world, a ghost without a home. And that's how I remained, trapped in the shadows, watching as my body withered away. The figure came back every now and then, but it was always the same. It was always too late. Years passed, and I watched as the world changed around me. People came and went, but I remained. I was a ghost, a lost soul trapped in the unseen world. And then, one day, it happened. I felt a tug, a pull, and I knew that something was happening. I looked down, and I saw my body. It was awake, and it was looking right at me. For the first time in years, I felt hope. I tried to move towards my body, and this time, it worked. I felt myself being drawn back inside, like a magnet. As I entered my body, I felt a surge of energy. It was like a shockwave, and I could feel myself coming back to life. I opened my eyes, and I saw the world around me. It was blurry at first, but then it came into focus. I was in a hospital room, surrounded by doctors and nurses. My family was there too, and they were all looking at me with tears in their eyes. I had no idea how much time had passed, but I knew that it had been a long time. The doctors told me that I had been in a coma for years, and that they didn't know how I had come back. But I knew the truth. I had been brought back by the unseen world, by the figure that had watched over me all those years. From that day on, I knew that there was more to the world than what we could see. I knew that there was a place beyond life, a place where lost souls like me could find their way home. And I knew that I would never forget the unseen world, the place that had saved me from the darkness. My father wasn't too terrible, but I certainly preferred my mother. Though, in hindsight, I may have simply overcooked him. It all started when my father started to become more controlling. He would yell at me for small things, like leaving a dish in the sink or not making my bed perfectly. He became increasingly demanding, and I could feel the tension in the house building with each passing day. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I was in the kitchen, making dinner for the family, when he came in and started berating me for the way I was cutting the vegetables. I snapped. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a cast iron skillet, and swung it at his head. The skillet connected with a sickening thud, and my father fell to the ground, unconscious. At first, I panicked. What had I done? But then, a strange calm settled over me. I knew what I had to do. I dragged his body to the oven and turned it on. I watched as his body roasted, the smell of burning flesh filling the house. It was sickening, but also strangely satisfying. I had gotten rid of the problem, and I felt free. The next day, I served the roast for dinner. My mother and sister didn't suspect a thing. They ate heartily, complimenting me on my cooking skills. And, to be fair, the meat was delicious. But as the days passed, I couldn't shake the guilt that was building inside me. Every time I looked at my mother and sister, I felt sick to my stomach. They didn't deserve to be living with a murderer, but that's exactly what I was. The guilt was eating away at me, and I couldn't take it anymore. I turned myself into the police, confessing to everything. They took me away, and my family was left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. It's been years since that fateful night, and I've had plenty of time to reflect on what I did. I still feel guilty, but I've come to terms with what happened. My father wasn't a good person, and he had been making our lives a living hell. But that didn't justify what I did. Now, I spend my days in prison, thinking about the past and what could have been. If I had just walked away that night, maybe things would be different. But I can't change the past, and all I can do now is try to make amends for my actions. In the end, I learned that violence is never the answer. It only leads to more pain and suffering for everyone involved. And as I sit here in my cell, I can only hope that someday I'll be able to make things right.